Right, good evening and welcome to tonight's meeting of the, thank you councillors, the North Planning Committee. I'm Councillor Ed Labour, Committee Chairman. Can I take apologies for absence first, please?
Yes, Chairman. Apologies received from Councillors Flynn, Morgan and Dushu, with Councillors Edwards, Yarrow instead as their respective substitutes.
Any declarations of interest? Minutes of the meeting 20th of June are in your bundles. Anybody, can I take those as agreed? There are no matters notified in advance or as urgent, but there are some changes to the published agenda, and I'll do those in a moment. We have got item 7 was withdrawn by the Head of Planning earlier this week. It is not being considered tonight. Item 9 is now a petition item, so we will have 6 followed by 9, and there are 2 enforcement reports in part 2 tonight. Sorry?
Through you, Chairman. I thought we were having the petition first. Is that right?
Well, there are 2 petitions.
Oh, there's 2.
6 is also a petition.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, it's all right. Chairman is on the ball, yes. Right. Just behave in general now. I know this is the 3rd meeting of the night for some of us, so it is getting... if we do hear any fire alarms, there are no drills planned, so we will be exiting the building. Can I ask please all phones are please switched off or at least to silent. In terms of the 2 petition items, I'm aware that the petitioners in respect of item 6 are not here, but that the applicant or their agent does still have a right to address us, because that once the petition is in, they do have. There are no ward councillors on any item. In respect of petition items, petitioners and then in response applicants or agents have 5 minutes to address us. You get 4 green, 1 amber, and I stop you at red. Whenever a petitioner addresses us, members may ask you questions, they may not. Tonight's meeting is on YouTube, so anyone who addresses us will be on the recording and will be heard. Can I please ask that everyone, including officers, make sure they speak clearly into their microphones. There are 1 or 2 members who may not need their microphones in this room, but on the YouTube it is slightly better if you use one. Okay, now this is a bit I think I got wrong last time round, so I'm going to try and get correct this time round. Voting members of the committee tonight, I'm going to start on my left just to be different. Councillor Councillor Oswald, Councillor Dillon, and then working down the table on this side, I've got Councillor Edwards, Councillor Higgins, Councillor Graham, Councillor Yarrow and Councillor Stead. So a slightly different line-up to the usual North Planning, but all people who've done this for a long time. Mandeep Mahatra is presenting, James Rogers, the Head of Planning, will provide us with advice. Neil Fraser is our clerk, and Rasheen Rogan is the planning lawyer. I think I've done all the bits we need to do. Can I head please first for item 6 on page 9, which is land to the rear 51 and 53 Pembroke Road, Ruislip.
Thank you, Chair. Item 6 is 51 to 53 Pembroke Road. It's located to the north of Pembroke Road. The site's outlined in red on the plan on the screen. The application proposes the erection of 2 3-bedroom detached bungalows with associated car parking and amenity space. Now, the proposal is actually proposing the units within the back gardens of number 51 and 53. I'll take you through the plans. So these are the 2 plots for the new properties. They would be accessed via an existing access route from Pembroke Road. Plot 1 would be located here and plot 2 on the other side. There are indicative layouts for both plots. You can see from the elevations they are chalet bungalows. And there are some plans which show the relationship to the existing properties. There are also some street scene images which have been provided as part of the application. We'll keep going through them. There are manoeuvrability swept paths to make sure that to demonstrate that the parking arrangements work for the new properties, or would work. And this is the land survey plan with the existing trees. The wider concept. So the application site is effectively this property here and this property here. So those are the 2 at the front, number 51 and 53. There is a better plan which shows, there you go, the existing vehicular access, which would be opened up to provide the new vehicular route to plots 1 and 2. And this is the rear gardens of the property itself and the adjoining and the boundary landscaping at the moment. It is a very long garden, but it's not uncharacteristic of this area for there to be detached large properties with extensive gardens. The application has been before members a number of times, not this one, other iterations of this application. It's been refused 3 times by members for a variation on this scheme, but effectively for 2 additional units within the rear garden. We have had 3 refusals which have been dismissed on appeal for larger proposals. The current application does alter ever so slightly from the appeal decision which was dismissed. The buildings have been reduced from 2.5 stories to bungalows. The width of dwellings have been reduced by 1.7 metres, and the width of the hard standing has also been reduced by 0.4 metres, and new planting is shown in this plan. It's not considered, however, that these changes address the previous reasons for refusal and also the appeal decisions that have been issued, so this application is recommended for refusal for the reasons set out on page 9 of the application committee report. Thank you, Chair.
The petitioner, I know, is not coming. You're here on behalf of the applicant or the agent. You just press the red button when you're about to start, and then we will time it from this end. Red button on the middle of the microphone base there. Yeah. It'll light up. Thank you.
Thank you. Chairman, committee members, thank you for the opportunity to address you this evening. My name is Steve Prismal and I am the agent acting for the applicant. As you've just heard, this site has an extensive planning and appeal history, with the primary concerns being the quantum of development and the effect on views between buildings towards the site. With regard to the principle of development, the inspector has already stated, I conclude that the loss of garden land as proposed in the appeal proposals would not cause unacceptable harm, and that this factor does not justify the refusal of permission here. And he also stated that in principle, therefore, there is no reason why some form of residential development on the site should not be acceptable. Also, in response to our pre-application inquiry for the scheme before you, the council's officer stated there is no principal objection to backland development, providing that it is of appropriate scale, form and massing that does not erode the open and green character of the surrounding area. With regard to the quantum of development, we are proposing a 60% reduction of floor space from the earlier proposal and a reduction from 2.5-storey houses to single-storey bungalows that are no higher than the site's perimeter hedges. In commenting on our pre-application inquiry, the council's officer stated reduction in the size and scale of the development are welcomed and considered acceptable in the context of the site. In relation to the proposed drive access, the appeal inspector previously stated that the proposed access onto Pembroke Road would be visually acceptable. With regard to the effect of views between buildings, and subsequent to previous appeal decisions, the council has approved a new 2-storey dwelling attached to the side of number 51. And whilst this would not go ahead should this application proceed, it is a material consideration as it would have further restricted views towards the site and affect the Pembroke Road frontage. It must also be stressed that there are no views into the garden land of either 51 or 53 Pembroke Road from the street, as the gardens are either obscured by buildings or 2-metre-high close-boarded fences. Additionally, as the land proposed for development is devoid of any vegetation other than grass, there is consequently nothing to be seen from the public realm. The high-level vegetation of trees and tops of hedges that can be seen between buildings is aligned exclusively on the site boundaries and is to remain unchanged, with the new dwellings designed to be subservient to this to ensure they are not visible. In summary, the benefits of the proposal in relation to the 2010 appeal are the buildings are reduced from 2.5 stories to bungalows. They're not chalet bungalows, they are bungalows. Width of dwellings reduced by 1.7 metres. Eaves lowered by 2.6 metres, ridge lowered by 2.6 metres, gap between the proposed dwellings increased by 6.8 metres, the drive width and hard standings reduced, with soft landscaping increased to the frontage of 51 and 53 Pembroke Road. Extensive new soft landscaping, including 6 new trees within the body of the site, and all boundary vegetation retained. 2 new trees are also proposed along the Pembroke Road frontage. We have addressed all previous matters of concern, and this was reflected in the positive pre-app inquiry response. Yet the committee report you are considering is like chalk and cheese to the advice previously received. We have requested an explanation to this, but so far a response has not been forthcoming. This matter is obviously of a great concern as the application was progressed in light of this advice. However, I do need to draw to your attention the fact that the Council's case officer for this application has not visited the site, and as the site is not visible from public land, we fail to see how the merits of the proposal have been adequately assessed. It does seem to us that the committee report plagiarises previous reports, and it does have a number of errors. For example, it is stated that 5, 6 and 7 Green Walk abut the northern boundary, whereas only number 5 has a short 4-metre shared boundary, whilst the garage forecourt abuts the majority of the northern boundary. Also, the report excessively labours the views into the site, which in reality do not exist, compounding the misapprehension that the new buildings would be visible. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time. I will obviously try to answer any questions you may have, but should members of the committee still have any doubts, I confirm that my client is happy for any decision to be deferred to give the committee and indeed the case officer the opportunity to visit the site to fully and properly assess the proposals. Thank you for your time.
You've presented what I think is a fairly selective view of the appeal decisions. I draw members' attention to page 19 of the committee report, which draws out some matters you have left out. I'm sure members will consider that appropriately. In regard to your other comments, in line with what I normally say at this juncture, if you feel that, or your applicant feels that the advice they were given is inappropriate or whatever, the council's complaints procedure is the way to address that. The report we have to consider is the signed report presented to us by the head of planning, which represents the considered views of the planning department and associated officers. And I won't deviate from that. I'm not doing that debate because that's a debate for others in other places.
I quite understand that, but I need to be...
Well, you raised it, I'm killing it.
Yeah, okay.
Okay? And that's not just you, that's what I would do on all of these things, because we can't get into that. We have to look at what's before us.
Yeah.
Councillor Oswald, do you have a question for...
No, I don't.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for... No. Okay. In that case, if I could just ask you to turn the microphone off for me. Thank you very much. That's you done. Councillor Oswald?
Yeah, thank you very much, Chairman. I have read the report and I tend to agree with what you've just said. It's all in the summary, really, and I think that with that, I'll move the officer's recommendations.
Thank you. Councillor Edwards?
I agree. I don't think this development has been put forward addresses the recent Imperial Inspector's comments about a built in back gardens, and therefore I'm second this.
In favour of refusal, please clearly show. No one's refused. I move on. Nine next, which is eight or nine? No, 9. 66 The Drive, which is now a petition item, so we will take that one next.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just try and get to the right slides. So committee item 9 is 66 The Drive. I will draw members' attention to the addendum where there are some comments that have been added on. We have received one additional letter of representation. Now, this was received within the 48 hours window. We have highlighted that most of the issues have been addressed, and Highways are also content with the revised parking layout, which was one of the concerns raised. We've also received an additional petition which has been accepted by the Chair, and I believe it was circulated. Again, it addresses all of the points it raises are addressed in the committee report. I will also mention that we did receive an email from one of the adjoining occupiers this morning I have been through it in detail. It raises a number of points, and I would like to go through each point, but I will also stress that they have been addressed in the application committee report, so I don't intend to labour the details. The objections raised in the email that was issued were the urban construction in a rural setting of this proposed development, the lack of parking, even with the increase that is proposed under the current scheme, which I will come on to, the impact on on-street parking and safety, comments about an extension at number 64, which is and isn't relevant. It's the adjoining property, and I'll point it out on the plans later. Now, some issues raised related to the detailed design of this application. The application before us is an outline application which seeks all matters to be reserved. So they will be brought back or assessed at a later stage through reserved matters. So design comments that have been made, I do feel are something that I'm not going to write off, but they are comments that we're not really considering at the outline stage. Other comments related to proximity and also not meeting the separation distances of 15 metres. Now, I believe from the information in this email, they have misinterpreted the requirements for the 15-metre separation distance, and I can go on to that. The 15 metres, I think they believe, are between the side boundary of the property or the side boundary of the proposal and the adjoining property. The 15-metre rule actually relates to distances from habitable rooms, front and rear. There are also points on the 10% rule of conversions on, so this relates to our policy about not allowing more than 10% of conversions. This is considered in the committee report. One of the issues raised in this email is that number 66, so the application site, should not be taken as the midpoint of the survey. Now, the policy is quite clear in saying that the application site, so number 66, is where the midpoint of the survey should be taken. And those are all the points that were raised. I'll go on to the application. So the item was taken to planning committee and deferred. Members were seeking further information about whether the quantum of development could actually be accommodated on this site, albeit this is an application which is for outline planning permission only for 5 residential units. We have been able to secure some additional plans. I won't go through the exact detail of the application again because it has been before you. So this is the existing layout of the application site. Now, if you notice the plans, you will see that this is labelled as number 65 and 67. They are actually number 64 and number 68. So this plan, which does have the correct street reference, is the one that we should be referring to, but there's no other ambiguity about this plan. There's nothing actually incorrect about it, just that also dimensions of the properties are accurate. It's just that they've been referenced incorrectly. This plan is the additional plan that you've received, or we have received, to demonstrate that the proposals would not infringe on a 45-degree line if they were put forward as a layout through the reserved matters. So under the previous plans, there was an additional section here which has been removed to reduce the impact on number 64 and also to ensure that we aren't infringing on the 45-degree line. The other aspect that was of concern, I believe, to members was whether the parking could be accommodated on site. The Highways comments had asked for a minimum of 7 parking spaces to be provided, and that would have been through a condition, but what the applicants have actually done is demonstrated that 8 parking spaces can be provided within the front driveway. Highways have confirmed that the layout meets the standards required. There is an additional parking space over and above what is required, but there are still concerns by residents that there is an under provision of parking. This is an indicative layout, so it's proposed floor plans but for illustrative purposes only, and this demonstrates that 5 units can be accommodated within the layout that is shown on this plan. So that's after having removed this section which adjoined number 64 from the previous plans. The application is recommended for approval, and I will passes back to the Chair.
Thank you. We have a petition on this one. Mr. Clark? The button on the middle, it'll light it up. Yep, and when you're ready.
Chairman, committee members, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you this evening. My name is Simon Clark and I live at 68 The Drive. I'm speaking on behalf of the majority of my fellow residents of The Drive, both north and south. I have not previously objected to any applications over the last 20 years by my immediate neighbour, and I have positively supported other development proposals such as Harefield Place. However, this proposal will have a huge impact on myself and fellow neighbours. Despite a small degree of tinkering with the original submission, the latest proposal has not changed fundamentally. The proposal is of high-density flats. Flats with 11 bedrooms will have a huge impact on the street scene in this rural spot. Plans now show flats housing 21 people. This is an urban, high-density proposal that is out of character. The drive, as you may be aware, is an unmaintained private road without street lighting, pavements or drainage. Much of the road is less than 4 metres wide, with the north end barely having space for 2 cars to pass. This already presents highway safety problems with no pavement. Residents, including school children, must walk in the road. And significant challenges already exist because of the width, and residents or visitors there too, generally by mutual consent, do not park in the road. The PTAL rating for this location is 1. The bus stop for Ickenham/Uxbridge is 15 minutes walk away, and pavements are absent for some distance. According to Table 6.2 parking standards, in suburban locations with a PTL rating between 0 and 1, up to 2 spaces per unit may be required. In fact, this is a rural location, and other properties in the road have generally 1 car per adult. These flats, we believe, are likely to be priced to appeal to couples and professionals who will need access to a car to get to and from work. With plans showing flats capable of housing 21 persons, 8 parking bays seems inadequate, and it is unclear where other cars will park. The golf course and residence properties must of course be accessible to utility etc. vehicles. The main access is from the south, as we have a blind junction at Harville Road, which is also very narrow. Evening functions at the golf course do use coaches, which would be unable to exit with on-street parking. You're probably aware that a refuse truck is 2.5 metres wide, and the minimum gateway width for a fire pump is 3.1 metres, according to London Fire Brigade guidance. Given lack of pavement and street lighting, road width and the proximity of the golf course access, we request 2 spaces per dwelling as a minimum. Even with this, significant doubts remain where other vehicles can safely be parked. The proposal remains out of scale with its surroundings and is an overdevelopment of the site. Its construction is not possible without permanent damage to the privacy and overall well-being and enjoyment of our houses and gardens for numbers 64 and 68. Although this is only an outline application, we consider the proposal conflicts with a number of guidelines. The proposed bulk would totally dominate and potentially overshadow numbers 68 due to the increase in ridge height and location to the southwest. Moreover, numbers 68 and 64 would lose all privacy to the rear with living accommodation to the first and second floors of number 66. Amenities cannot be safeguarded regardless of internal layouts. The 8 parking bays are already a tight squeeze. The parking court is shown, I believe, 2.2 metres from the flats, yet there appears to be a bay window projecting what might be up to 1 metre, which further reduces the spacing. Finally, there are no elevation drawings provided, which prevents a full assessment of the impact on the street scene and on the neighbouring properties. So, gentlemen and committee, if this application is approved, at the very least, we request 2 parking spaces per dwelling in accordance with residential parking standards. This would go some way to reduce the inevitable pressure to park on the road, the resulting highway and amenity problems. However, we maintain this is an urban development in a rural location for up to 21 persons with insufficient parking in a low-density location of mature detached houses. In light of these matters, we request refusal.
Do members have any questions? No. For the applicant?
Yeah.
For the petitioner, sorry.
Thank you for your submission. Are there any other developments like this along the road?
Not in this section of the drive, no. There is another development of 5 flats on a larger plot. Yeah.
Right, thank you very much. Is there anyone here on behalf of the applicant or the agent for this one? State your name as you begin, that would be helpful.
Okay. Hello, my name is Geoffrey Gillette. Thank you, Chairman, for giving me the opportunity to speak and address the committee. I haven't prepared any specific notes. I think the planning officer has made our case very well, that the application should be approved. I would like to just react to Mr. Clark's observations about our application. The first point I'd like to make is the application is purely an outline, which we're not providing any details of the elevations, which is quite normal. It's an outline application to establish the principle only of the development. And we don't ask the council to assess the effects of the amenity of the adjoining owners above the 45-degree line, which we have addressed on the plans. The application has been substantially reduced from the previous application, which was before you at the last committee meeting. We've taken off a large amount of bulk off the back of the building to address your concerns. But to talk about potential overlooking and effects from windows is quite wrong, because the application is purely an outline. With regards to the parking and the road, this part of the drive, I live in Ickham, so I know the road quite well, is not generally used to get to the car park. If I was driving to the car park, I would come down Highfield Drive, make a right and a left, rather than come off Harville Road, which is a dangerous corner, and the road is in fairly bad state of repair at that end. So I think concerns about traffic coaches going to the golf course is a little bit onerous, but a little bit erroneous, because I don't think they'll go that way, and I don't think there's an awful lot of coaches go to the golf club anymore, because it's in decline, I understand. The parking has met your standards. 2 spaces, I believe, would be excessive in today's climate, where we're trying to reduce the dependence on the motor car. And in fact, the London plan suggests 1 space per 1 and 2 bedroom unit as a standard across the whole of London. So, to suggest that this is a rural site is again, I couldn't agree with that statement. I believe it's to be a suburban site. It's not. It's got houses on both sides of the road. It's not. It's adjacent to some rural land, but I wouldn't describe this as a rural site. The house itself is a large, substantial house, very similar to the house adjoining to the right. And the outline of the existing house is shown on the plan, and the footprint is not that dissimilar to what is on the site at the moment. So I don't believe that it represents an out of character. I mean, compared with the house to the right, the footprint is pretty similar. I don't consider it to be really going to be out of keeping with the general pattern in the street, because the houses are very substantial. I think that's all I've really got to say, and if there's any questions, please answer. Any questions from members? Is that existing house you've just put up? Okay, thank you. Councillor, is it for the yeah, just checking that nobody's...
Can you tell me what your intentions are with the outbuilding at the back, please?
Well, that would, I think that would be removed as part of the detailed design. I don't think there's any intentions to keep that building.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any others for the...
Yes. Is the proposed building and outline likely to cause overshadowing to number 68, which is next door, given the size of the property and its positioning?
I think that's,
that north sign doesn't-
hang on,
that north
Councillor,
sign doesn't correspond with the map.
yeah, I will direct that to the officers. That's not for the applicant's agent to give an opinion on, that's for officers to give an opinion on, and I'll be guided by the officers.
Thank you, Chair.
So no, it's the right way to do it. Unless anyone's got anything else? No? Okay, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
We'll open for debate. I think, I don't know if all of you saw those, if you weren't watching the screen, as I was, that's the current house. Let's just be, so, I didn't know if everybody saw that as it went up. Right, who wants to start me off? Councillor Higgins, are you going to start with this one?
I would love to start with this one. I mean, I'm thankful for the applicant actually to making changes and listening to what we were concerned about. But I do tend to agree with the petitioner in the sense that two parking spaces in this particular area where the transport service is very weak, let's just say, for argument's sake, would be preferable, because also this is a house or flats that are going to be in the top end, and I would expect executives would probably have company cars or their own cars. So and
I need to take some guidance.
that's fine.
As you know, parking is always an issue.
I'm just putting it out there what officers come back with to do. The other issue is I think that the problem with this is that there is the convenience of the building line. Because 68 is at an angle and it's a new building line,
There'll be less overshadowing.
it's causing a kick-out problem here. I mean, if you look at the edges, you've got a measurement on one of these drawings of where the 45-degree angle hits. Now, if that property or the outline application was, let's say, another metre or 2 metres inward, then it wouldn't really have been an issue. Do you understand what I mean by that?
Not a clue.
Okay, can we go to the drawing?
Well, I might as well give the honest answer.
No, that's fine. If you're lost, you're lost. I can't help you. No, but it's the back end. If you see where the 45-degree angle is coming out from number 68, no, the other side, that's it. Right, you carry that line across there. That distance between the fence and the point of the proposal is making it overshadow or over-dominant number 68. If that was moved, let's say if you moved it this way more, then that wouldn't be an issue. And I don't think you'd have that feel of that bulk there. If the distance from the front of 66 to the fence was the same as it was on the back, then you wouldn't really have any issues with this property. And also, I do note that the applicant has confirmed with that outbuilding will be removed, and that would be one thing that I would definitely ask was conditioned to actually accept the outline application, that is, because that could quite easily be another form of residency. So those are my points.
What are you asking in terms of?
Well, I'm just saying that officers I think we need to look at having more parking spaces on.
Okay, let's start with the parking.
And please don't come back to me and say, well, our policy is 1.5. I understand that, but you're asking us to give outline permission on a luxury building.
I take your point, Councillor, but I have to be guided by policy, because otherwise I will get us in a set of trouble that we don't need. The head of planning
I can
will
give
comment.
a very simple answer on the parking, which is I don't think we can refuse this level of parking, the fact that we've got 8 spaces, because, as you say, we normally look for 1.5 spaces for larger flats, and where there are smaller studios or one-bed flats, then it's the 1-to-1 ratio. And so 8 spaces with 5 flats, that comes to about 7.5. So 8 spaces is compliant. So in effect, we cannot refuse the application on parking. It would be my view.
Second point, which is about
Over-dominance and the 45-degree angle and the property.
45-degree angle get met.
So, we do need to stress that this is an outline application. There is an existing belt of quite mature trees, and I will point that out between the two properties. They're proposed to be retained. That could be conditioned should it be deemed necessary. But when you're talking about dominance, there is a certain amount of visual separation which exists from what is on site. You are also complying with the 45, or the proposals are complying with the 45 degrees, and the detailed design at the reserve matter stage will assess this in more detail. And if it is considered to be over-dominant, it will be something that is addressed at the reserve matter stage when it comes to layout and design. I appreciate that doesn't provide you with the comfort that you need at outline stage, but we're not able to...
No, I take your point, and I'll a little more indulgence and I'll move on. Councillor Higgins.
Yeah, well, that's fine if we condition to keep those trees. I don't really have an issue as long as that is done. And also, it's conditioned that the rear bit of the rear outer building is removed.
We'll double check. I think that is already conditioned. We've got trees to be retained. I don't know what's been shown in the plans as regards trees.
There's none on the plan.
There's no trees, is there?
There's tree protection condition. There's trees here.
All right. Right. Let me hold that one for a second, and I'll come back. Councillor Dillon and Councillor Oswald.
Out of character, whilst the road is has large buildings on it, for me, flats is what makes it out of character.
How would you get out of character out of flats? Can I just throw a reverse to that?
It's the density of use.
Okay.
So I don't think 21 people living in one building, as it were, for that particular road is in character with that road.
Okay. No, I just wanted to see how we...
Well, in the in-principle part of the report, it explains that obviously we have our 10% rule for flatted developments. There is a precedent of flatted development already in the drive. Obviously, no one plot is identical, but there has previously been flatted developments allowed, and we're under the 10% point. So, and the way you explained it, it sounds to me kind of like an in-principle objection, but we wouldn't be able to do that in this particular case, I don't think.
You have to know then. Yeah, that's all right. I'm doing clarity tonight. Councillor Oswald, you were going to...
I was, yes. Thank you very much, Chairman. I was going to ask what the percentage of flatted development was, but I think it's probably under 10%. It is? Yeah, okay, thanks. Well, that's that answered. As far as the car parking is concerned, it's in policy. I know what you're saying, but it's in policy, and the report's in policy. It's only an outline planning application. I'll move the officer's recommendation.
I'll hold that 10 seconds. There was a query about, do we have the power on outline to make that outbuilding disappear? Which I think is what the councillors just said.
I think the simple answer is I need to vary the conditions if members want to ensure existing trees are all protected and that the outbuilding, in effect, there needs to be an additional condition to say, notwithstanding the submitted plans, the outbuilding shall be removed.
Well,
it is a quite larger outbuilding, so if it was retained, it could have a multitude of uses. Okay. I'll leave it at that.
All right. Would members be comfortable? I know one member is certainly keen on that, but I can't take a general consensus. Yeah. Okay. So if we delegate it to the head of planning to amend conditions to ensure that the outline reflects that trees are to be retained and the outbuilding to go, notwithstanding the accepted plan.
If I can just check. Yeah, so what I need to change is at the moment it's cross-referencing the plans in terms of trees to be retained, but the plans don't show all the trees.
That's right.
So there will need to be some changes to ensure a better level of protection of trees, but I'm quite confident we could easily word conditions to address that point.
Okay, so I have a proposal to take this forward. Do I have a seconder? Or do I have another query?
Can I just have another question, if I may? Very simple one. What percentage of the front garden is left as soft landscaping, and does that meet our policy requirement?
So it does meet the 25% in the indicative layout that we have, which is our policy.
That's a good answer to that question. Right, do I have a second on that basis?
Can I just say, I mentioned possibly overshadowing recently, but the position of north on the two maps is different, so it doesn't apply now.
Okay, thank you. Right.
I second this.
Right, we have a proposal to accept the officer report with the head of planning being delegated to amend the conditions to remove, to notwithstanding the approved plans, remove the outbuilding and to with reflect that existing trees on the site be retained. All those in favour, please show. Agreed. Thank you very much indeed. Right, I'm now moving backwards on the agenda. Item 8 is 1D Kent Gardens, which is, I think the pictures may almost do this one, mightn't they?
1D Kent Gardens is an application for a single-storey rear extension with a glazed roof. There are also proposals to change the boundary fencing and hedging, which is adjacent to the eastern boundary. So this is the application site. These are the plans which show this is the existing parking space for the unit. This is the proposed single-storey rear extension. The existing brick boundary wall runs along this boundary line, whereas the application site itself includes this area of land to the right of this image. We take you to the photographs. This is a really useful plan, but we'll come back to it once we've seen the photographs. At the moment, this is the application site, and this is its front elevation, and it has a small timber picket fence. We take you around to the side elevation. This is the brick wall we mentioned, but the actual land within the ownership of this property is where this timber picket fence is. It's basically leaving a small strip of what I would otherwise call dead space there. So the applicants are looking to erect a single-storey rear extension here, which would mirror the one that is on the adjoining property. They would, as a result, remove the brick wall. This is their outbuilding. And if I take you back to the proposals, this plan shows you at point 1 they're removing the existing freestanding brick wall, which is here. They will erect a 1.5 metre close boarded fence, which is shown as the orange/red dotted line. They will plant hedging in this hashed area on the outer limits. The small picket fence will be retained until the vegetation has established, and that will allow for a larger enclosed area. It will also provide a better visual amenity for the public realm along this boundary. The application is recommended for approval.
If I can give a bit more background to this, because there's some slightly unique aspects to this application. So what happened when the RFE scope development was undertaken is there was large kind of communal amenity areas maintained by the management area that weren't associated with any particular property. There were some bits at the side of groups of houses or flats that were what you'd call private amenity areas, but not big enough for people to play in, so more kind of attractive landscaped areas, and they were maintained by the management company. But this is a bit of an anomaly, this particular bit, because probably it should have been captured by the management company, but the house was sold with a greater area than actually the rear garden outside of the enclosed area and so what's happened is it's been left to the homeowner to maintain the bit of land to the right of their property, which they've got rather fed up with the situation. They then came in and applied to enclose the whole lot right up to the pavement edge. Now, we actually refused that under delegated authority, but when the chap came in and he actually saw me, I said, well, I think there is a perhaps positive way we can help, because Robert Reeves, our landscape architect, he was involved with the whole scheme. Why don't I arrange you to meet him and then discuss if there's a compromise? And so the council's landscape architect then came up with the suggestion of setting in the boundary treatment and then a hedgerow be grown, and then it's felt that would be a compromise that would still have an attractive visual aspect, but also enable this to deal with the fact that this sort of parcel of land to the side of the house was never actually captured by the bits that we dealt with by the management company on the site.
Councillor Higgins?
Yeah, are we sure that the actual owner actually owns this park?
Yeah, we've actually checked the title deeds, because we did specifically check that bit, and it was all transferred to the owner of the property, and there wasn't any bit kept that the management company are maintaining. But there are some larger bits to the sides of properties that aren't big enough that, you know, kids are playing with them, but they're what you call private and amenity areas that contribute to the attractiveness of the estate and are maintained by a sort of landscape management company that looks after the wider estate. But unfortunately for this chap, is the bit to the side that's been left to him to maintain, and there is a risk that if he doesn't maintain it, it will actually become an eyesore.
So it's fortunate rather than unfortunate that he's been keeping it, because he's actually managed to get a bit of land that he didn't know he had. Correct? Yeah, so on that note, I'd go with Officer...
Can I just, before we do, the report needs a correction which hasn't come in the addendum. We've got conditions 3 and 4, which are a kind of a duplicate of each other, and I would suggest, if I could be so bold, that neither are needed. Because actually 5 covers what we're critically interested in, which is the establishment of the hedge. How he maintains the rest of his garden and landscapes, I think we might leave to the applicant. So could I suggest that conditions 3 and 4 are struck, and we just leave 5? I don't think we need all of that. Well, we certainly don't need it twice, but that's a bit of an overkill. Move it. Moved, seconded. All those in favour, please show. Thank you very much. Right, let's just double check that we've done them all. Can I ask you... Can I ask you to note the S106 report, please? Can I therefore ask... We're about to go into part 2. Can I therefore ask for the live feed to be killed?